Doug and Renee Benefield lived in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina with their teenage daughter, Eva. In December of 2015, Renee died from an undiagnosed heart ailment, a difficult tragedy for Eva and for Doug. But then, just 9 months later, Doug was married again, this time to a 24-year-old woman named Ashley Byers, a swimsuit model and ballerina. It was a quick romance as they got married just 13 days after meeting at a political event. Ashley had a dream of opening a ballet company in Charleston where they lived. Doug supported that effort, and together they started to put it together, a project which caused a lot of stress. And then in the midst of launching the company, Ashley got pregnant. From there, more stress and the relationship soured. Ashley moved to Bradenton, Florida to live with her mother. She and Doug then became entwined in a bitter custody battle for the baby. Ashley accused Doug of trying to poison her, something the family court judge rejected, finding that Ashley did not present a scintilla of credible evidence. Then, just before a big date in family court, Doug was at Ashley's home with a U-Haul, loading up items from inside the house for a big move. While Ashley's mother and daughter were at a nearby park, something happened between the two in that house, and Ashley shot and killed Doug. She's been charged with murder, but is claiming self-defense, and there are some unanswered questions surrounding this shooting. We'll take a closer look as we investigate the Black Swan murder case. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thanks so much for joining us. As we look at the relationship between Ashley Benefield and Doug Benefield, the backdrop for a shooting and a killing, the question is, what exactly was going on in this relationship? What was going on in this family court battle? This is the backdrop. This is the most significant part of what we anticipate hearing in this case. It's a courtroom battle in family court that seeps over, and now we're in a criminal courtroom with murder charges against Ashley Benefield. So what I want to do is walk you through the timeline of this relationship and this battle and this emotion and conflict in their lives that ended in such tragedy. We begin in August of 2016, and this is the part that a lot of people are like, wow, that's fast. They meet, and after 13 days, they're married. So it's a very, very quick romance. She's coming off one marriage, and he's a widower. April to July of 2017, Ashley claims that Doug began to act violently. August 3rd, 2017, Ashley finds out she's pregnant. August 26, 2017, Ashley moves to Bradenton, Florida to be with her mother. Then in the fall and winter of 2017, Doug then gets up from Charleston, gets down to Bradenton, gets an apartment near Ashley's mother's house where Ashley's living. March 19th, 2018, Ashley gives birth to her daughter, but it's several weeks before her due date. And Doug did not know that his child had been born. April of 2018, Ashley files an injunction motion in family court to attempt to deny Doug custody or visitation with his baby. July of 2018, there are hearings for Ashley's injunction for protection from domestic violence. In September of 2018, Judge Diane Moreland denies the motion and sets up a visitation schedule for Ashley and Doug. Then you go from September of 2018 to 2020. The custody battle continues. They adhere to this visitation schedule, but Ashley makes more allegations against Doug. And then Ashley and Doug are both ordered to undergo a psychological examination by Dr. Brad Broder. September 27th, 2020, Doug drives a U-Haul to Ashley's home in Bradenton as they pack for a move to Maryland. It's on this day when they're packing for the move that Ashley shoots Doug to death in her bedroom at her mother's home. September 30th, 2020, that was the date that Dr. Brad Brodeur's psychological evaluations of Doug and Ashley were scheduled to be released. Dr. Brodeur testified at a hearing. Take a listen to what he has to say, because this really underscores what was happening right around the time that Ashley shot Doug.
She made it very clear on more than one occasion that she had no intention of reconciling with Doug, and that she had every intention of relocating to Maryland with her mother in Emerson, particularly because her grandmother had passed away and her mother had inherited that home so she could return to her native home state of Maryland.
And did she indicate to you that she was going to go without Doug? Go to Maryland without Doug?
Again, in several different occasions, she had indicated that was her intention. She did not want him to come along with her. There was some email exchanges indicating that she was trying to make that happen. He made it clear that he was going to be going there and thought that he'd be moving in with them, which she clearly made clear to me that that was not going to happen.
Okay. So she made clear to you that he is not moving in, we are not getting back together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did she say those things and act that way during the joint session with Doug?
No.
Okay. How was it different?
It was different in that her presentation of herself was more deferential to Doug because her goal, as she had shared with me, was to, in essence, kind of appease him, go along with him, you know, because she was concerned he might get angry and blow up. So she wanted to just kind of go with the flow, as the expression is, and therefore she was willing to go out to lunch or go to a movie or hang out with him and Emerson. So she was not going to present that ultimate goal, certainly not with me. In those sessions, it didn't come up.
So in her private sessions, she's saying one thing about her intentions, not to be with Doug, but when she's with Doug, not necessarily saying that. I think Doug is under the impression that they're going to reconcile and move together to Maryland. What exactly is going on here? Because this is at the heart of this murder case. Joining me, Doug Benefield's cousin and family spokesperson, Tommy Benefield, and Doug Benefield's former attorney, Stephanie Murphy. Thank you both for being here. Stephanie, I'll begin with you. I'm trying to understand the status of things. Was this a divorce case? Was this a custody case? What exactly was this at the time of the shooting? What was going on? What was the purpose of the evaluations? And from your perspective, what was your understanding of what was happening with this couple?
So the divorce case was still pending. In fact, we had a hearing scheduled the week after Ashley ended up murdering Doug. But the hearing was technically scheduled to be in an injunction case that Ashley had filed earlier that year. Once again, her injunction had been denied, but a hearing was set and continued several times at her request so that we could attend mediation, which was done 3 days before the murder. The murder happened on the Sunday, and then we were scheduled to be in court on that next Wednesday. The purpose of the hearing on Wednesday was to address the joint motion to release Dr. Brodeur's psychological reports.
So that's when everyone would find out what the intentions or the intentions of Ashley were to not be with Doug. Tommy, at this point, is your cousin under the impression that he's getting back together with Ashley and the family's going to live together in Maryland?
Yes, sir. And not only his impression, but Ashley and Doug, when they picked up this 26-foot U-Haul truck on Saturday, Ashley told the manager, because I spoke to him personally, about the fact they were putting their family back together. They were moving to Maryland. They had already filled up a pod of all of the Ashley and her mother's, a lot of their house goods. And Doug had filled up the truck with all of his stuff. He had brought the truck over there that night. On Sunday, he called me before he brought the truck over and he called me and said that he had found out on Sunday that Ashley was not going to have Doug move in with Alicia, Ashley's mother, Ashley and their daughter in Maryland. This was, I think, the third time in not only the house in Lakewood Ranch where he's killed, he moved in there and then never got to move in. They got an apartment together on paper. She never moved in. And this was the third time that he thought they were going to move in together. That's what she told other people. And that's what he believed until Sunday when he found out. And he just told me, I'm going to have to find a place to live in Maryland. That's when the change occurred to him, was the Sunday of the murder.
So, Stephanie, you mentioned that there's a mediation. What was your understanding, and what is going on in the mediation? Is the couple saying we're getting back together? Are they saying they're not getting back together? What is the communication level there with the court?
Well, Vinnie, I'm not allowed to actually reveal what was said at the mediation. What I can tell you, though, is prior to the mediation, both Ashley's attorney, as well as myself and the mediator, had an exchange of emails explaining that the intention of the mediation was just to get a report from the mediator in passing so that we could have met the mediation requirement. And we specifically advised ahead of time that the parties were reconciling and moving to Maryland together. And then at the end of the mediation, the mediator filed what's called a mediator report. And that mediator's report is matter of public record. It is part of the divorce case file. And that clearly states that both Ms. Brown, who was Ashley's attorney, and myself, Doug and Ashley, attended the mediation, and the result of the mediation was in fact an impasse. And the mediator's report specifically stated that an impasse because the parties were reconciling. So you can draw your own conclusions as far as what happened at the mediation, but we were in and out in 15 minutes or less.
And if she moves to, if she moves to Maryland, did he still have rights to see the child? Like if she decides to go without him, like how was that going to work?
So if she moved to Maryland, either with or without him, he still had rights to have time sharing with their daughter, as long as the courts here had an order that said he was allowed to. The trick of Ashley was that after 6 months in another state, she would be able to establish what's called home state jurisdiction, in which case another state could exercise jurisdiction over the child and Florida would lose jurisdiction. And the significance of this is that Ashley despised Judge Diana Moreland. She wanted her off the case, and she is a very clever person, and she knew that in order to do that, she had to leave the jurisdiction and be gone long enough for the other state to be able to exercise jurisdiction over Emerson.
It's such a complicated, layered situation, but you're giving me some clarity tonight about what exactly was going on at that time. Our guests are staying with us. When we come back, we're going to talk about Doug Benefield and how much time did he actually end up spending with his child? She was born, he didn't know it, but did he get to bond with his daughter?
A former ballerina charged in the death of her husband.
Said that she attacked her and she shot him.
She's claiming that he is the aggressor in all of this.
I see a liar, I see a manipulator. She killed my dad.
Will the jury see her actions as self-defense?
Boy, did she have every reason to fear him.
Or murder.
The Black Swan murder trial. Live coverage next week following jury selection on Court TV.
Court's also going to find that the wife has at this time demonstrated a complete disregard for allowing Mr. Benefield to have any active role in the birth of his child and or the life of his child that he has now not had any contact with.
That's the judge talking about what happened when Ashley and Doug's baby was born. Doug had no role, was denied access to his child. Then in September of 2018, the same judge found that this young child has not yet met her father. So we are going to schedule the first visit. Take a listen.
They have a very young child that I have to, I'm not going to switch time sharing as of, or custody at this time, or time sharing at this time, because we have a child that has not met his father, or has not met her father. And, but I do think that I need to start and I think that most experts would say it has to be often time sharing, except we have the long distance situation in this particular case. Ms. Murphy, how often is your client here in Florida?
He can come every other week, Judge.
Okay. And when we say every other week, how long are those periods? Okay. So the first time sharing is going to be on 9/21. That's this Friday. He will, and these parties are going to be changing. The exchange is going to be at the Manatee County Sheriff's Office. That's 600 U.S. Highway 301 Boulevard West, Bradenton, Florida. At 1500, the parties will meet at that residence. At that facility, the Sheriff's Office facility, for the exchange of the minor child. She shall have all necessary schedules written down by Ms. Benefield so that the father can follow the schedule that this child is accustomed to. He will then keep the child until 1800, at which time both parties will report back to the Manatee County Sheriff's Office to exchange the child.
So still with us, Doug's cousin, Tommy Benefield, and Doug's former attorney, Stephanie Murray. Stephanie, can you go through how did it go for 2 years? The agreement, and did things go smoothly, and what were some of the terms?
Well, things were up and down, to be perfectly honest. The first time sharing took place, as Judge Moreland said, on the 21st of September. I was actually with Doug when he got to meet his daughter for the first time at the Manatee County Sheriff's Department. And things took a turn for the surreal immediately. Despite all of the allegations that Ashley had raised about Doug up to that point, she decided that she was going to just go along with Doug for his first visit with his daughter. So over my objections, Doug agreed to that, and Ashley loaded Emerson in the car seat into the back of Doug's truck, and they left together. And then that began a peculiar, almost year-long time where Doug and Ashley were together all the time. So he was allowed to have, according to the court order, a certain amount of time sharing with Emerson. It was frequent to start, and then it became long visits as far as weekends. He was allowed to have extended time in the summer over the holidays, but Ashley had just inserted herself into Doug's life at that point. Everything came, however, to a screeching halt in August of 2019. Doug and Ashley and her mom agreed that as Doug's lease was going to be ending, Doug would actually move in with Ashley and Alicia. This got to the point that Ashley had Doug move all of his things from his apartment into Ashley and Alicia's house. But the morning he was supposed to move into the house, she ghosted him. She wouldn't take his calls. By the middle of the day, she finally answered the call and said she was recording him, raised all the old allegations again. Here we are almost a year later, and then said, "You're not moving in." And Doug was floored. He called me. He was just appalled and just beside himself because he had no idea what was happening. He thought he was moving in with Ashley, his, at this point, estranged wife, but that they were reconciling. So then began a whole new period, which was similar to the prior to the injunction, where his time sharing was strictly limited to what Judge Moreland ordered, but which was expanded upon by written stipulation of Ashley and Doug right after the hearing. And that continued pretty consistently despite half dozen CPS allegations, despite a new injunction case being filed. Doug still exercised every second of time sharing that he was allowed to have, according to Judge Moreland. And further, we were making ongoing efforts to modify and increase that through our own motions for psychological evaluations, motions to appoint guardian ad litem, and then a petition and another emergency motion to award him sole parental responsibility and majority time sharing. Unfortunately, he was killed before we got to have the trial on that matter.
Tommy, I heard the words, distance was an issue here. How much of a challenge was that? And did your cousin get to bond with his daughter?
He did get to bond with her. I mean, the extraordinary efforts that he made to travel 12 hours from North Carolina on a Friday to pick her up in the afternoon, or 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours from South Carolina. He did that for the full year from 2018 to 2019. When he wasn't allowed to move in when he thought he was to their home, he went ahead and rented out his place in Charleston, and he got an apartment there in Lakewood Village, but not in the neighborhood, near the neighborhood where Ashley and Alicia and the child were living. And then the second lease, that was a 6-month lease, was the one that Ashley signed when indicating she would come in and they would live together. Doug got to have her at his home. When I picked up everything from the apartment after the killing, after the murder, he had everything that a parent would want to have, with toys and games and perfectly prepared apartment for the two of them. And he made extraordinary efforts to spend time with his child. They were swimming together. They were going to the beach together. But every time Ashley could do it, she would try to do it together with the two of them, except for one time that was so extraordinary also. There was a time on the exchange at the sheriff's office that Ashley showed up with an engagement ring on, gave the child to Doug, gave the bag, and ran out. That was odd based on the previous year and a half.
Tommy, we're out of time for tonight, but we appreciate both of you coming on. Tommy Benefield, Stephanie Murphy. Thank you both. We'll be speaking again, obviously, as this story continues. When we come back, we'll bring in our experts and try to get inside the mind of Ashley Benefield.
And you were asked to evaluate her, Ashley Benefield, correct?
That's correct.
And were you also asked to evaluate Doug Benefield?
Yes.
Okay. And what was your purpose of, what is your goal? You're not law enforcement, so what is your goal when you do an evaluation?
Well, sometimes the evaluation might be just parent effectiveness. Sometimes you're assessing for substance abuse. But more often than not, it's an evaluation, psychological evaluation for mental health issues.
So the big question that I have is, what is going on with Ashley Benefield? Like, why is she saying different things at different points? Is she the victim of a violent man, or is she someone trying to deny her husband from seeing his child, or her estranged husband from seeing her child? Let's take a look. This is an order from the Stand Your Ground hearing where the judge commented on what the doctor had found and what the doctor had heard from Ashley Benefield. Take a look. During Dr. Broder's individual time with Ashley, she told him on more than one occasion that she had no intention of reconciling with Doug, and that it was her intention to relocate to Maryland with her mother and her daughter. She did not want Doug to go with them, despite email exchanges where Doug said he was also moving to Maryland and intended to live with Ashley and her mother. Quite the opposite. Ashley was adamant to Dr. Broder that Doug was not moving in with her and they were not getting back together. She also told Dr. Broder that she did not believe Doug could be a good parent and was not comfortable with him having the child overnight. Her intention, once she lived in Maryland for at least 6 months, was to appeal to the child protection authorities there for help, because she wanted to block Doug from having their child. Let me bring in our guests. We've got to get to the bottom of this. Joining me, clinical and forensic neuropsychologist, associate professor at Pepperdine University, and author of the book, The New Rules of Attachment, Dr. Judy Ho is with us. Also joining us, forensic psychiatrist, trial expert witness, and columnist, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Thank you both for being here. Dr. Judy Ho, I know this is difficult, but she's saying one thing when she's with the evaluator, Dr. Broder, about, I don't want anything to do with him. Then on the other hand, they're doing mediation, and Doug seems to be under the impression that they're reconciling. What do you think is going on here?
Well, honestly, I feel like this can be used for either side's argument, right? On the one hand, you can say, look how scared she was. Her defense can say, look how scared she was. She wasn't even able to tell him the truth. She wants to go with the flow because she doesn't want him to blow up. So there could be a narrative that is building from that side. But then the prosecutions claim that this is a manipulation. And I think it's interesting that she's telling the doctor this. She's telling the psychology evaluator. So that's not really a confidential source really in the same way. There's certain things, especially because of the way that he was brought in, his role, evaluating both of them, that she must have known that it may not be confidential quite in the same way, that the legal system is going to get wind of this. So what was she doing being so clear about her plan to the psychologist who was evaluating her? So I think that actually would stand to be a claim for the prosecution that maybe this is a manipulation.
Yeah, Dr. Carol Liederman, take a listen here. This is more from this order. Ashley never told Doug these things in Dr. Broder's presence. Instead, she told Dr. Broder she was going with the flow so as to not make him angry and have him blow up. She claimed that Doug was controlling, highly manipulative, and intense. This appeasement strategy included going to lunch or a movie with Doug, but she told Dr. Broder that they were not living together and were not intimate. So it seems that Doug is reading it one way, but she is doing it for another reason. And this is tough. Someone has to figure out if Doug is stalking her, threatening her, or if she is manipulating the situation to keep him away so she can have sole custody of her daughter. It's very confusing to me because she's telling the doctor one thing, telling, it seems, the mediator and the lawyers and Doug something else, but is still spending time with Doug.
Well, it's actually not that confusing when you look at her. First of all, these kinds of evaluations, I do these all the time, and you really have to be very careful as an expert psychiatrist or psychologist to explain to the person up front and perhaps remind them that what they're telling you is not confidential, that you are going to be writing a report, you're going to be testifying in court, and you're going to be telling everybody, what your assessment is, what is in the best interest of the child. So, so either she didn't know or she, that it is confusing. But clearly, there's a connection between the fact that he was going to be testifying in court on September 30th and her having murdered her husband on September 27th. I mean, I think that she didn't want the jig to be up. So I think that there was a connection there. But she really, as I might have mentioned in a previous show, one of my books is Bad Girls, Why Men Love Them and How Good Girls Can Learn Their Secrets. She is the quintessential bad girl. There are 12 different types, and she is the gold digger type, but it wasn't necessarily for gold per se. She wanted a ballet company and she wanted a baby. Now, of course, the baby would also bring child support, but those were the things she wanted. And as soon as she, got those things, I mean, as soon as the ballet company failed, and then she got the baby, she didn't have a need for him anymore. And she wanted to get rid of him, but she was gaslighting him. She kept, pretending that there was hope. She kept giving him hope because he did love her. He was starstruck. He did want to be with her. And so she knew that if she kept feeding him enough, then he would be there and he'd keep, giving her everything she wanted.
I want to read another part of this order. As Dr. Broder neared the end of his evaluation period, Ashley expressed her frustration with the system, including CPT, law enforcement, the courts, Judge Moreland, and Dr. Broder, because she believed that no one was helping her protect her child. She told Dr. Broder that she was running out of time and would have to, quote, take matters into her own hands. That's a powerful statement, can be interpreted, I guess, different ways. What are you taking away from this part, Dr. Judy Ho?
Well, Vinnie, that is a threat if we've ever heard one, especially given what we know now. And I understand that she's proclaiming her innocence. But in that paragraph, she's documenting that she's taking absolutely no responsibility, that she blames everybody around her, the system, other powerful people for all the problems that she's having. And it's interesting, I wish I knew more about what Dr. Broder then said next, when she said, I'm gonna take matters into my own hands. I wonder if he asked, what do you mean by that? What do you mean you're going to take matters into your own hands? Like, what did she say next? You know, what kind of threat was this? Was it a vague threat or was it a very specific threat? But to tell an evaluating doctor involved in the legal case that you have around custody, some statement like this, that's bold. That's very, very bold. And again, just like Dr. Lieberman said, there must have been at some point that she knew this is not really confidential the same way that a patient-doctor relationship is. So what is she doing, dropping all these truth bombs throughout this evaluation about her plan, her big plan? She's basically unfolding the plan for this doctor who is evaluating her for the court.
Let me ask you, Dr. Carol Lieberman, she's saying no one's helping me protect my child. Right? That's the impetus for this. And Doug, she perceives as the threat. What are your thoughts here? Because I'm looking at this a couple different ways. Doug could be an actual threat, or Doug could be like a perceived threat by her, or he could be no threat at all, and it's sort of the line she's using to get her daughter all to herself and get away from this guy that she doesn't want to be with anymore.
She manipulates men. And I think she thought that she was manipulating the psychologist just like she manipulated Doug. I don't think he was any threat to his daughter at all. You know, let me just go back for a minute. Part of what makes a bad girl is they're having a dysfunctional relationship with their father. And her father abandoned her when she was a young girl. And, you know, her mother supposedly had this email account where she said 2 geese, no gander, and then it was 3 geese, no gander. So, she, you know, it was her psychology to take men for what she could get from them, and especially Doug. I mean, the other part of it is, in order for a bad girl to be successful in what she wants, she has to find a sitting duck. And he was a sitting duck when she met him. He had just lost his wife 9 months before. He was in pain, his cousin was saying, from an injury. And you know, and she walks up to him and you know, he was a sitting duck, and she took him for everything until she didn't need him anymore. And it's just such a sad story.
I want to read more of the order because there's more to this. While she told Dr. Broder about the allegations she previously made against Doug and her claims of abuse towards their daughter, Ashley never told Dr. Broder that Doug had physically harmed her or that she was afraid of being battered by him. She described the gun incident in South Carolina as frightening. She claimed that Doug had a violent temper and punched holes in the wall at their home in South Carolina. She also admitted to getting into yelling and screaming matches with Doug. However, Dr. Broder noted that Ashley did not mention any examples of violence since moving to Florida. Ashley told Dr. Broder that she suspected Doug had poisoned her, and she claimed not to breastfeed their baby for fear of poisoning. She alleged that she had a toxicology report confirming her beliefs and that she suspected Doug had poisoned his first wife. Even considering Ashley's accusations, Dr. Broder never had any concerns for the safety of her or the child. During his evaluation periods, Dr. Broder had the opportunity to observe Doug alone with the child, and when both parents were present with the child, and his observations were positive regarding Doug's ability to be a comforting and soothing parent. So, Dr. Judy Ho, what do we think what is motivating this? I'm trying to understand what would motivate this type of behavior and the way the doctor and the judge and everyone else is reacting to the situation.
Well, if the allegations about Ashley are true, and this was a premeditated attempt and a successful attempt on his life, then this is her weaving the story of why she had to act in self-defense, according to her defense, right? This is somebody who's dangerous, even though she wasn't able to provide specific examples of how he was violent. These ideas that I think otherwise are unfounded, other than in her own mind, that he may have poisoned his first wife, and that's why she died. I think that was the insinuation, and that maybe she's being poisoned herself. Notice how much she's bringing their child into this discussion, right? So it's not just her saying, hey, my husband might be a bad person. It's, oh, but I'm so worried and concerned about our child. She's trying to rally that concern from everybody else around her to provide justification. But it doesn't sound like there's ever been any proof that would suggest that her husband was going around poisoning his spouses. And yet she came up with that after not being able to come up with any specific examples of him being dangerous to her or her child.
Now, there is violent, I mean, he's punching the wall, he's firing the gun into the ceiling. That's very questionable behavior here, Dr. Lieberman. We have about 15 seconds. Do you see that as violent, threatening behavior?
Well, she was driving him crazy. She was driving him she was making him so frustrated with all of this gaslighting, all of this, oh yes, there's a chance I'm going to be with you. Oh no, there isn't, pulling out at the last minute. And I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating as far as who would have been the better parent. Her daughter is standing in front of the courthouse with a sign, please free my mother or something. Any good mother would not have their child, would not let their child
We're going to talk about that. Dr. Carol Lieberman, when we come back, that's right. The daughter of Doug and Ashley at the courthouse holding signs, keep my mommy free. What does that mean?
One of the most successful true crime TV shows ever.
This is crazy.
Now has a new home on America's original true crime obsession, 48 Hours on Court TV. Coming up next on Court TV.
She could hear the bat hitting her father. Michael was under the influence of Courtney.
And Michael Moore is not the person who killed my father.
Accomplice to Murder with Vinnie Politan. Sunday night, 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
And then putting the child out there in front of the courthouse with her sign, we understand the sentiment, but that's not what most people do. That's very unusual to do that with a 6-year-old child.
And this is what Tommy Benefield's talking about. That's Doug and Ashley's daughter. She's there with her grandma holding a sign, keep my mommy free, as her mommy's inside a courthouse fighting murder charges. So what about that? What about that? What would make someone put their child out there, and is it good for the child? Is it unhealthy? What does it tell us? Let's bring back in our experts, Dr. Judy Ho, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Dr. Carol Lieberman, you were talking about this. How about from the child's perspective? She's about 6.5 years old. Does she understand what's going on here?
Well, it's emotional abuse because, yes, of course, she would like her mother to be free. But on the other hand, her mother's accused of killing her father. So she's going to be having really conflicting emotions. She would like to be with her father, too. So it is just torture for the child. It's really so narcissistic, so just the mother's just thinking of herself. And this is very cruel. She could be reported for emotional child abuse.
Dr. Judy Ho, your initial reaction to seeing this, because I've covered a lot of cases. I've never seen this. I've seen adult children show up at a courthouse. I've seen adult children voice their opinions strongly, but I've never seen it with a 6-year-old.
Well, Vinnie, it breaks my heart. And I don't know if, both Ashley and her mother jointly put the child up to this, but regardless, this is so challenging, already traumatic for this young child. Of course, lost one parent. They don't want to lose both parents, right? Don't want to effectively become an orphan if mother gets prosecuted. So she's in a tough spot. If the adults in her life are saying, please, we need your help, this is going to create a good image for us as we fight this in court, the child's of course going to say yes. The child has conflicting information and feelings about the mom, most likely. Still loves the mom, probably, even if there might be some doubt in her young mind. And there might be, you know, children know so much more than we give them credit for. And I think that this could be another form of trauma. I mean, essentially, she's being paraded out to do this when she really should be shielded from everything that's going on in the court. She should be with safe people, family members, healing people, mental health professionals to help her process this away from the public's eye, not essentially standing out there being a poster child for her mother and seeing all the scrutiny too that's walking by the way, because not everybody is going to be supportive. Some of that hate's going to fly her way because she's there, quote unquote, helping her mom.
Let me ask you, Dr. Carol Lieberman, if Ashley Benefield is in fact convicted and is found guilty and is sent away for a long time, I presume that grandma will raise her. What do you tell a child? When do you tell them? How do you explain the situation? And how much interaction should this child have growing up with a mother who is behind bars for killing her father?
Well, I think that the mother is probably not any better of a maternal figure than you know, I think a good case could be made for her to be raised by her father's family, you know, perhaps the cousin, for example. I don't know if he wants that, you know, that's a possibility, or some other family member of the father. You know, it is cruel. It's very confusing. It's, you know, and when you look at her, the video that you just showed, she does not look like she's happy standing there, you know, trying to get her mother's freedom. She looks like she's you know, in pain, in emotional pain. So it's just torture.
Dr. Judy Ho, in the alternative, if Ashley Benefield is exonerated, is found not guilty at trial and walks out and lives the rest of her life, at what point should she talk about this, and how should she talk to her child about it? Because it will be on the World Wide Web forever.
Right. And if she is exonerated, I really hope that she stays in the private realm of things. I don't hope she doesn't give too many more interviews or even gets a documentary created about her so that she can go and talk about this more and more, because that's a form of trauma too, to have to see this over and over again for the child, for the child's peers. They're going to ask questions. I hope that they go and live a quiet life and that she focuses on being a good mom, the only living biological parent left for this young child.
How much influence? Go ahead.
Good, but that would be great, but it seems like it's very unlikely that she's going to. That doesn't seem like her personality to do that. I mean, it's hard. You know, what you're supposed to tell a child in circumstances is, it would very much depend upon what your view of it and her mother's view. You know, her mother's going to say, "Oh, your father was really violent towards me." I mean, that's awful to tell a child.
It's a tough situation. We'll see how it turns out. There's two different versions of what happened here. A jury has to come to some conclusion and figure out what happened and why it happened and what it all means. But incredible insight tonight. Dr. Judy Ho, always appreciate you, and Dr. Carol Lieberman as well. Thank you so much for helping us through this, and I'm sure we'll speak about it again. Okay, folks, before we go tonight, speaking of children, we have a child who is missing. She's 17 years old. Her name is Lachey Renee Wheeler. Lachey is missing from Tampa, Florida, the same area where all this is happening. She's been missing since July 1st. So this is what you can do. Take a look at her face, take a look at her picture. If you see Lachey, make a phone call, pick it up. 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office down there in the Tampa area. Let's see if we can get Lachey to a safe place tonight. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night, and please don't forget to hug the kids.